Good day, everybody. Or good night, depending on your area. We will get started in a minute. There's not a huge number of people here. And these are slides from a previous meeting, because I didn't create slides for this meeting. Apologies for that. But we need to at least show the note well, so we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's give it a couple of minutes to see who shows up. All right, that's enough type. Why don't we get going? Welcome to the Secure Asset Transfer Protocol interim meeting, and we'll have another meeting in Madrid in a couple of months. But the goal for this one will be to climb through the recent changes that have gone to at least a couple of the documents. Reminder and note well, hopefully you have all seen this before, otherwise you're probably not showing up in an interim meeting. But by participating, you agree to all the IETF processes and policies and things like that. There's a whole bunch of helpful pages about how the IETF works, including our code of conduct. And essentially, it boils down to treat everybody with respect, speak slowly, and limit the use of slang and idiomatic phrases that are only useful in your particular region. Dispute ideas using arguments and best engineering judgment. You guys have seen all of this before, of course, and then contribute to the ongoing work of the IETF and the whole of the internet. This session is being recorded. It will show up on YouTube probably later today. Make sure you know that. If you have a dirty background like mine, you can decide what to do. And that's our working group information, and that's it. So I think, Thomas, with that, I will turn it over. This is not the right agenda, so don't look at that.
Sure.
Turn it over to you. I will go ahead and take notes, but if anybody else wants to help me, there's a link for the note taker.
Thanks, Wes, for the slides. I mean, should I put up my slides, or do you? Is it in Meet Echo already?
I put your slides in Meet Echo, so you should be able to do the slide share request.
Oh, okay. Request is okay. Am I pressing the wrong button here, folks?
You press the right button. I am.
So it says you got slide control. Okay. Or did I? Let me try it again. Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It is a slightly confusing system.
So yeah, the core updates. Hey, Claire.
Yeah.
I need to pick one. Okay, I'm so sorry. From your selection.
There we go.
Okay, this is too hard for an engineer.
You're good.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Okay, so SATP core. So this is probably one of the sort of interesting updates. Probably not exactly major, but one of the things we noticed in the appendix was that there was not a matching numbering for the error messages, and it was pretty generic. And I think, Wes, I think you had pointed this out like back in April, like, hey, the error section is a bit confusing. So we fixed that. And in doing so, we actually realized, we've never said like what's the error message type. And so we introduced a new message type, just an error message, right? Which is going to be different from abort, which is going to be the next slide. And in the error message, basically, a gateway can indicate to the opposite gateway there's an error. So you have to mention the current session ID, the error type, and this is the error code. That's one of the error codes in the appendix. And then just to confirm that just, the error pertains to the previous, like whatever you just sent me last time, opposite gateway, there's a hash of the previous message, just so that both gateways know exactly which flow that they're referring to. There's an error severity, which we have not yet defined. I would think maybe we just leave it there for future, because this could be something that could be improved upon in future versions of the spec. So this is actual error in SATP. So this is not TLS error. This is not IP connection error. Something is wrong in the payload of the SATP flow from one gateway to another, or vice versa. So that's error type. So in talking about error types, we said, well, look, what happens if a gateway just says, okay, there's no error, but like I want to abort, and it could be caused by the user deciding, I want to abort this. It could be decided by anything else, but it's not a TLS error. It's not a SATP message level error. It's something else. And so another message is that we talked about it all the time for the last couple of years, but we've never actually, specified it. So this is another new message type. It's session abort message, right? And so the interesting thing about this is really, I mean, you can abort, anytime in the flow, so long as it's before message 3.5, because that is the commit final, right? I think we've known about this, for the last 2 years, that anything after the commit, that's the whole point of the commit, right? And so that's the second addition we made, and I think right now a gateway doesn't have to say why. There's no error code. There's no reason code. It's just I'm aborting. Okay, what's the next slide? So security considerations.
Can we interrupt you for a second?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Yes, go back. So I go back.
So I'll try and watch hands. The first hand up is mine.
Go ahead.
And this is speaking for myself, not as a chair, right? So a couple of things about the previous slide, which is you have a hash of the previous message. That makes sense, but why not? Isn't there also a message ID, and why can't you just use that as opposed to having to, hashes are computationally expensive?
Yes. We could. So this is we're thinking, should this be mandatory or optional? Right now it's written as mandatory, but we can make it optional. But you're absolutely right. There's a message number would also be a useful thing, right? So the error type actually implies the message number, the error code. So if let's say it's message 3.1, there is an ERR underscore 3.3.1
Right.
listed in the appendix. So in fact, this by including the error code, the gateway already knows which message you're talking about. You're right.
If you're going back and forth, you're making an assumption that that's always going to be the case. The more typical way to do it would be to include a identifier in each message that slowly increments over time, like a serial number, and then include that in the error response. Right now, you're assuming synchronous, which I think makes sense, and you're assuming that past that the message types will never repeat. You'll never get into like a loop where you're negotiating or whatever. So food for thought. I mean, you can do what you want.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We did have earlier versions of the spec actually had a count with basically a nonce, and then you increase the increment the nonce for every message.
Right. Okay. And then the second thing on this slide is the error severity. Severities are incredibly subjective, so I understand the difficulty of picking those. And not only that, severity is often one-sided. What might be severe on one side is not necessarily agreed to on another. But that's it. And then, no, that was all of my. On the next slide, you said to check the GitHub repo. So are some of these changes that you're mentioning only in the GitHub repo, not in the draft you published the other day?
Correct. So just
Okay.
as we uploaded it to the IETF site, some more comments came through and said, okay, so in the GitHub repo, the .markdown is always, there's an editor's copy. It's always the latest version. So I think the IETF draft may not have session abort.
Okay.
But it's in the and so plan is before July IETF, before Madrid IETF, we're gonna do another update on core to make sure that it syncs with the GitHub editor's copy.
Okay. Sounds great. Do note that the draft cutoff is a couple of weeks before IETF, so be careful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I forgot about. Yes, okay, yeah. So yeah, so we should update by the end of this month, right? Basically by the end of June. Okay.
Yeah, you can look up the dates. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Any other questions, folks? Hey, Dennis.
Dennis. Hello all. Sorry, I'm outside from the conference, so there is some background noise here. I don't know if you hear me. Okay. Hello, do you hear me?
You can go ahead though.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think that the abort is not after 3.5. I think it's after 3.4, because if we call burn on the asset and the asset is burned, we cannot abort. I think the asset must be created on the other side. So I have the impression that the abort call can only be before 3.4.
Yes, 3.4, 3.5, because when Gateway 2 is creating a temporary asset, it's minting to its own, it's under its own control, right? So you can always revert it back. It hasn't given it to the beneficiary, so it's still in the control. So if there's any abort, it can always say, okay, well, we just wasted some CPU and maybe a bit of transaction fees, but we can recover that. That's why it's 3. I could be mistaken, Dennis. It could be 3.4 in the flow. Let me have a look. Okay. Any other questions? Let me.
Rama. Hi.
Hey, Rama.
Hey. So it doesn't matter if the gateways that is sending an abort is the one that is due to submit the next message. It doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter. Either side could say, sorry, can't continue. Okay, literally. Okay. we have to be ready for that scenario. In my mind, I think it's mostly application driven. The application decides, oh, okay, cancel. The user says cancel.
Right. Just one more quick thing. Do you think should have a field for? Okay, you have the session abort message. Okay, so the session abort message may contain a reason why the gateway wants to abort, right? It's not mandatory, but it can provide a reason.
Yeah, right now it doesn't have any. We can add an optional, reason code. Right. Yeah. And yeah. So this is it's like we don't want to go down the rat hole of creating a reason table, because as Wes was saying, it's kind of subjective. But yeah. But the point being is that this is not an SATP level error. This is something from outside SATP is deciding this.
Right. Now, and I was also wondering, and maybe this is something we probably shouldn't do because of the risks, but could a gateway also maybe try to send a suspend message saying it wants to suspend the transfer for a while? But this is risky because it can create denial of service possibilities.
Yeah, this is like yes, this is an interesting question. Could one of the gateways say, hey, could we suspend for 60 seconds, right? But you're right, it's going to open up a whole bunch of opportunities for attacks, because the design logic is that both gateways have done all the talking they need to do, negotiations and so on, in stage 0. And then basically SATP is the point where they pull the trigger and it has to finish in milliseconds.
Right. I mean, one use case for a suspension could be that if the the network backing behind the gateway is taking a while to finalize the transaction, then the gateway may need more time.
Right. So this is I think Rama, I think the groups talked about this. Like if it's too long, would it be worth just canceling the whole thing altogether and trying again in a few minutes, right? And by the way, this is why the duration, the average duration of the network finalization is a parameter that both sides need to exchange in stage 0, because then you can the gateways can determine the duration of their timeouts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. No, but that's good input. Thanks, Rama. Okay. What's the next slide? Oh, security considerations. So actually, this is more a question for the chairs. So there is a lengthier security considerations in the architecture document, and we didn't want to like repeat it all over again, or should we, not exactly repeat what it says in the architecture document, but provide basically points of weaknesses, like things like abort before 3.4, things like could timeouts be used for attack? What does denial service? I mean, is that a legitimate type of discussion for a security consideration section?
Yeah, it is. I mean, any way that you feel things could be misused should go into the security considerations, and I recognize they can get long, and there is sort of a limit of how nitpicky you get. You will get a lot of feedback during the IETF wide last call, by the way, about that. The security directorate will review it. I'm actually on the security directorate, but I won't review this one. And with respect to two documents, you sort of have two choices. One, you can duplicate all the text. It's very common to say all of the security recommendations in this other document, and then you refer to it, become are relevant to this. And so that's an okay thing to do. They will go forward together as a cluster, which is the IETF term for they have to be published at the same time because they sort of interlink between each other, or too important for each other. So it's up to you which way you want to go. I think if it's going to get really long, it's probably better to refer to the other one.
Okay, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Okay. Anything else? Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, 3.4. Okay. Yeah, one of the things we've been discussing as well. What's the equivalent of a rollback? Because if the network is actually a decentralized ledgers, there's no kind of rollback. But thanks, Dennis. I think I'm done on that one. Wes and Claire.
Okay.
Should I?
Well,
yeah.
Ask if there's any further questions about
any
the core
further questions? Yeah.
I think you're good.
Okay, great. So how do I swap slides? Do I stop? Okay, stop slide share, and then request again. Okay, stage 0. Okay, and so this is stage 0, and it's good to see.
Actually, Thomas, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So stage 0 is going to be kind of one of the last discussions. So you have no slides for the architecture document? So that was
no. Other than basically, I did the suggestions you made in your review from April 15th. I think you submitted a whole bunch of comments. Yeah, all of that has been addressed. And in fact, I was telling David that I had to do it 3 times over because my XML editor kept not saving the changes. So there are like a couple of more typos in there, Wes, in the architecture, but that's kind of the update.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. So when we get ready for final done, then you'll need to let the working group know, specifically the chairs, and I think Peter already has a write up and has his hand up as well. And then that was going to bring the one thing I want to discuss before we go into stage 0, which is really sort of the next stage, future discussion, is what the timelines are for getting these wrapped up. I think you said earlier you're planning on getting it all done and said by Madrid. Is that the case?
Yes, that's the ideal. Yes, please.
Understood.
People,
Okay.
don't find more errors, please. Otherwise, we'll finish. No more typos, please.
If you do find errors, make sure that you indicate an error number. No, just kidding. Peter, and then Claire, I'll let you go back to queue control.
Yeah, thank you, Wes. Just want to confirm on that one because I'm trying to help on the shepherding. So the architecture will be, just want to confirm, the architecture don't have any further issues that need to be fixed and should be ready before Madrid, number one. And number two is the core. Since the last discussion, the added issue or fixed issue is the error message, and we reached consensus on that one being fixed. Right.
Yeah. So for answer to one, no more updates to architecture except the literally typos, like David discovered I misspelled architecture somewhere in there. So like literally 3-word typos. So I think we're done with that. I don't really want to sort of do any more updates before Madrid for architecture. For stage 0, one more update by the end of this month to address the comments that was made about the hash breadth message and so on.
You mean core, not stage 0.
Core. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the screen. I'm reading core. Stage 0 is just a discussion. Yeah. Core.
Okay, good to know. I'll add them to the shepherding document.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Rama, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, so just wanted to apologize for my tardiness in addressing the comments I've received on the use cases draft. I know I got some from Eugene a couple of months ago, but it's on my to-do list, and I will finish it and push out a new draft by whenever the deadline is for the method submission. Maybe I think end of next week, right? Just wanted to let everybody know.
Thanks, Rama. Appreciate that.
Okay. Shall I go on? Wes and Claire? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So this is all future stuff, and it's good to see there's Luke today and joining and Alex, because Luke has just posted an interesting message about asset exchange. But anyway, so stage 0, what for those who don't know what they're talking about, stage 0 is the negotiations between gateways and the relevant parties there before the SATP protocol actually runs, right? So this and many of these things, many of the aspects of stage 0 is actually out of scope for like the IETF as a whole. In any case, for example, identity verification is not an IETF. It's a business function, or it's a government function, or some body is gonna do that. So things like that. But it's useful in stage 0 to discuss these, because many of the topics in stage 0 are the topics that organizations such as the banks and SWIFT and so on talk about every day, right? So just so that they are aware, that we are aware about the necessity of stage 0. So a number of us have been having like roughly 2 weekly calls about stage 0, just talking about like how, what is it that stage 0 consists of. The big one is like, how do you derive context ID, and how does app 1, like who kickstarts the whole thing? Is it app 1, and what is the kind of message that app 1, client 1 needs to carry out, and then if you have a network with 20 gateways, n number of gateways, how do you decide on G1, right? Because it's possible that the application app 1 doesn't have any relationship with G1, right? So we're looking at more of a here's the I want an intent indication to intent to transfer, and then the gateways can compete, pick up the proposal and run with it, so things like that. And then this is also very related to the API discussions. What would the APIs look like on the gateway, so that when the application finds a gateway ready to serve the transfer, it can actually communicate with the gateway, through a standardized API. So that's kind of, and folks, Dennis or Rama, and you guys want to jump in anytime, feel free. And I'm probably missing a number of points, but this is a rough sort of diagram of what we're referring to. So there's app 1, there's G1, and network 1, and the same thing happens on the other side. There's app 2, G2, and network 2, and there's three types of essentially relationships or interactions going on, which is A, B, and C, right? And so it could be, is it a one-way relationship? So, so this is the next slide, which is what are the assumptions, right? So we assume the application knows about gateway and network 1. So the application is a business application. Of course, it needs to know about the asset network. And of course, a gateway is serving a network, so it has to know about network 1. So network 1, being a network, it may have state in the network to say there's an intent or indication or desire to transfer, but a network cannot call back to an application. It cannot call back to a gateway. Right? So just this number 3 is sort of an important one. And then the fourth bullet is we assume there is a the app is involved in deciding. So there is a connection somehow between the gateway and the network, because the gateway is serving the network. But for a particular transfer instance, transfer session, this connection is actually established with the assistance of app 1. Otherwise, so app 1 is bringing together the selected gateway G1 and the network to do something, and this something is the transfer of an asset. So I'm going to just move forward, because I can flip back the slides, and I want like Dennis to jump in. So this is a very rough one side only of the kind of flows we're thinking about. And Dennis has already told me I've made a couple of errors. I said, fine, we can fix it. But basically, here's the client saying, hey, I want to do something. So there's an intent to do something, and we've just put in the smart contract there just because it's the most popular construct today. But if the network is not a DLT, it's a monolithic banking system, that an equivalent intent indication needs to be provided. And then a bunch of gateways look at this, and G1 puts up its hand saying, okay, hey, I want to do this. I pay me to do the transfer, for example. I will handle your transfer. This is step 3, and I think the word claim may not be the best verb, so we can come up with that. But basically, hey, and then client 1 needs to decide. So this is where client 1 is doing this connection, and we've used the phrase bind. So it's trying to bind together the transfer intent ID, because a client may have multiple transfer desires at the same simultaneously, multiple transfers. The asset ID, as you said, we have to talk about the same asset, so we just call it asset ID. tar ID is the ID of the necessary set of pointers to validate the actual asset. So TAR stands for tokenized asset record, and this is described in one of the drafts that Dennis is writing. And gateway ID of the G1, basically the gateway that puts up its hand and saying I'm gonna do this. And then number 5 is optional, if client. And so this is only one half of the equation. So once the client has done the bind, and then so resulting in a transfer context ID number, which is transfer context ID 1, it communicates this to the other client, right? But yeah, so this is where we are. So there's another longer, almost the same thing is repeated on the bottom side in the opposite direction, but that's TBD. That's again, this is still up in the air, still just hand waving and discussions.
We have
Thanks, Dennis. Go ahead, Rama.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about step 2, which Dennis says is not necessary, which may be the case. I just wondered, because we had discussed this earlier, should the read be if we are going to specify a read, should we specify it as a push or a pull, or say it can be either? Because most blockchain or DLT networks do have an event emission mechanism, so you can do that, or it can be a poll as well. So.
It's good question. So that's one of the things that we need to figure out. Yeah. Maybe both, Rama. This is the interesting question. Yeah, I just said read, meaning that the gateway is seeing something. Hey, here's a state. So the simplest case is, the transfer smart contract just says, I want to transfer this asset at this block, and I'm willing to pay, this amount of fees, right? And so if there's 20 gateways, they can figure out if they want to handle the case. But yeah, this is one of the big questions.
Okay, so the format is something we can probably specify, but leave the mechanism up to the implementation.
Yes.
Okay.
Peter.
Yes. Hi. I have a slightly more general question here. So because I see there's a intent of transfer, right? So I was collecting use cases, back in China, and so the one of the use cases that I collected that the customers of possible deployments are very interested in maybe could possibly be an intent of how we're going to use this asset, or how we're going to use this piece of data that connected to it, because is there any computational intent or intent of how to use it?
Yeah, so I think we're looking at the simplest case, Peter, right now, which is that there's a tokenized asset. It just has to be moved. But I think I understand what your question is. There is the bigger question. So in cases such as delivery versus payment, right? So the intent is where there's this tokenized asset going one direction, and there's some payment mechanism that's not here, that's out of band somewhere, right? So there's a bigger context around this that links the two forms of transfers together.
Right. So
right. And now, if it's data transfer, that's completely different. If you're thinking about data transfer, the third mode.
Right. It's not totally about the third mode. It's sometimes this the use case that I'm considering is it's not just a simple asset transfer. There might be like a transfer of data set along with this asset that it represents, at the same time. So this asset could also represent a real database or set of data. So
Yeah, no, that's right. Yes, yeah. So this is we haven't gotten that far, Peter. Look at this. In fact, I made a big boo boo. Number 4, line 4, there needs to be a bind to the network. Yeah. So this is early days. So I think we welcome any suggestions, particularly for the data transfer mode.
right, of course, I'm just asking for the possibility. Yeah, thank you.
And for those who are not familiar, in the architecture document, there's 3 modes we talk about, but the currently the only mode that we're in scope for SATP is the asset transfer, and there's the other 2 modes, which is asset exchange or asset swap, is what Luke and posted earlier today, and then data transfer is what Peter's talking about. That's the 3rd mode.
Quick comment from the chair's point of view. So you don't have to handle all the cases now, and in fact, you're explicitly banned from handling all the cases now, right? We weren't allowed to do bidirectional transfers early on. The tricky thing that will come in is it's very hard later to declare that you have mandatory parameters that didn't exist before. So if you're talking about things like Peter's request for additional context or whatever, it's helpful to sort of figure out a way to leave space for that, later. Or, I mean, to Peter's point, right, the other side could reject it saying, no, you didn't supply a context, or you didn't supply a reason why it's going to be used, or something like that. But so thinking about that ahead of time, or maybe there'll be a new message type in the future as well. And, my guess is that even the core document will eventually go back and be, I don't want to say rewritten a little bit, but as it'll need updates as the larger architecture for all these more complex cases, come into play, and updates will be needed, and that's an okay thing. But do think about how do you signal, the versioning that you want to do, and there can be a protocol version. I don't remember if you guys have one in the core document or not, but it's probably needed for, understanding between the 2 sides that, I am using version 1 of the protocol and I'm using version 2 max. So you always take the minimum.
Yeah. No, we have a protocol number is 1.0 for core. Actually, that was one of your comments. Yes.
Right.
Dennis was next. Sorry, Peter. Dennis was next in the queue.
Oh,
this was related directly to that.
Yes, thank you. So a couple of comments. First of all, the last thing that was said about the extension of the protocol. Indeed, to me, there are 2 things that have been reduced in terms of scope in what we do currently. One is the fact that we have a unidirectional transfer from gateway 1 to gateway 2. The second thing is the fact that we have only 2 gateways. So this notion of transfer context that we're introducing in stage 0 is something that potentially be extended when we'll be having 1 master coordinator gateway and several sub gateways that might be part of a one-to-many transfer thing. So definitely, I mean, there is something that we need to put here for that. I mean, the data structures should definitely be extended. Going back to the thing that Peter said, the intention here, it's something that goes in more in the direction of being more optimal in the way that we're using the protocol. Typically, if I know that potentially I'm going to enter in a locking of an asset, and there may be several gateways that are concurrently looking to eventually lock and transfer the asset, the fact that you have an intention at stage 0 to lock this asset later on might be better, more optimal to negotiate the transfer. So that's the notion of the intent that I understand from our discussions. Now, my other comment is on the flow, but I believe this is, I mean, too low level now to discuss. Maybe if we go from one to client to gateway, then we can have the 2 that is eventually optional, and then maybe we can optimize some of the flows here. But this is, I mean, mundane discussion that we could eventually take offline or via the emails.
Yep. Okay. No. Good input. So Dennis, just listening to you speak, one of the sort of use cases could be that in fact the client is wanting to do 2 related transfers. So it's doing 2 intents, just to pick a number 2, could be 3 and so on. And so there'll be multiple gateways that's handling this. So is there a need for a coordinator gateway to make sure that all 3 are completed, right? And by the way, folks, SATP is geared for that, because it's actually a 3-phase commit protocol. For those who remember the diagram, it's the grayed arrow is still there. We grayed it out, but we know there's the ability to put it back to a complete 3-phase complete 3-phase commit protocol.
Thanks, Thomas. Just before you move on, Peter, was there something that you wanted to add? Sorry, I know you were about to speak before I invited Dennis to the mic.
No, it's just about extensibility, extendability. So I don't hope to block the core the SATP core document to cause any blockers to that, but create some space for future extensibility could be a good idea. That's all I want to say.
Absolutely.
Yep. No,
thank you.
No, agree. I think as Wes was saying, yeah, this is I don't know, in a couple of years we'll have to update core. I mean, if I look at the history of other drafts that I'm familiar with, RFCs IPsec was updated a couple the X509. I don't know how many obsoletes are up there on the RFC page, but I think that's part of the normal process, Peter. So yeah, no, this is good input. Any other questions? And actually, we want participation in this stage 0, because one of the things that Dennis did not bring up is if you look at that diagram, there's a middle bit there. There is a place where we think it could answer questions about the validity or the state of an asset. If you want to move a token, where do you check that the token conform, the value of the token itself conforms to a particular financial standard, right? So we've just used the word metadata registry, and it's not used in this diagram, but further down below, step I think 7 or 8, which is still TBD, the gateways actually check to the registry. Anyway, so we're looking for people to jump in and help out on this, because this is also pretty complicated, actually.
Wes?
Yeah, so Chairhead again, right? Discussions are critical. They should happen on the mailing list or in meetings. It will certainly talk, give you a lot of time in it's a 2-hour meeting we have scheduled for Madrid, so there's a lot of time to talk about it at the next IETF. And then if you guys want another interim in, say, August, the month after or something like that, to really make progress on that, that's always a good thing, and just let us know.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Thanks, Claire. Any other questions, folks, for this slides for this topic?
Doesn't seem to be.
Okay, I'll stop sharing, Claire. I'll stop slide. Okay.
All right, so I think that means we're out of topics. Does anybody have any other business? We've hit the bottom of the agenda. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? I will say in Madrid, we'll certainly hit this, and then we'll have a discussion about sort of the future, the next steps. We did record all of the the thoughts from the previous discussion about, the next chartering items for SATP, and then Claire and I will try and work on what we think is a good next step forward. I think stage 0 is obviously critical in everybody's mind. But given that, I think Madrid looks to be a good conversation. But anybody else have any other business to bring up for the day? Hearing none, I think we are adjourned.
I agree. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.